Hi, Danielle. So very nice walking horse. So he's got a nice reach with his back end. You're a very good rider. You have proper position. It looks balanced with your shoulder over your hip and your heel underneath your hip. I know your horse, you told me he can trot, and you can actually see it in him as he's moving around. So his head carriage is good at this point in time. I'm sure if it gets too low, he probably gets a little bit more on the trotty side. So as you're progressing with him, you're just trying to play around and see, how low can you get it without him going over into a foxtrot or a trot. But to me, it looks like you would have to keep his head about that level to keep him in more of a lateral gait, like his flat walk. So he has a nice walk. You're shifting back and forth. You're doing a good job keeping him in the same rhythm as you're going around. If I was going to be picky, I might say stretch up a little bit taller, but otherwise for riding in a bareback pad, you're doing very nicely. So you can see as he's going around, there's times when he's a little bit more lateral and times when he's square, and sometimes he's going a little bit more towards that trotty side. And I'm sure you can feel it, but when he's going towards that trotty side or more towards a fox trot, you get that little soft bounce in the saddle, but you're doing well correcting it and raising his head up. So as you're trying to get his gaits, the only thing I would say is you could, I'm going to stop it. You could shift back a little bit more and try to get more on your seat pockets just to get more weight back here to keep him out of the trot. And you could bring your upper body back a little bit more. So you could bring your upper body back about here. And then when we go towards the saddle gate, when we get to that point, you might have to bring it back a little bit more. But for the most part, you're riding well balanced. He looks very good in that picture, besides my camera being blurry. And there, his headset is pretty nice. So it can be harder when you're just riding in a hackamore, but I know you said he still has his wolf teeth. But he seems to do very well in the hackamore and is responding well. So I would just stick with that. As he raises his head up at times, I would just follow with your hand. So as his head's coming up or we're bringing it up, just raise that hand a little bit higher to follow the line from his nose up to your elbow. So when he really gets going with his head shaking and his ear flopping around in there, he is going a little bit more towards a foxtrot at times. Your horse is a little tricky because he kind of gets in between being lateral and being trotty. So he does have a nice flat walk, and you have your running walk going there. And then at times he gets a little bit more towards that fox trot. So the best thing to do with him is when you're feeling more of a bounce in the saddle and you're not feeling that it's smooth or back and forth, that you just raise his head up, which it looks like you've been doing. And I would just, when you raise his head up, like bringing it up there, just raise that hand up to follow and sit back a little bit more with your upper body. Your lower leg and all of that is good. But there he does start going more towards that foxtrot. He starts getting in a groove and starts shaking, and then his ears start flopping. And then he starts just to get a little bit more on that trotty side. So he kind of gets in between a running walk and a foxtrot, which some of these horses can do when they're both, when they can trot, pace, and gait. This is more the speed of your running walk, But you see when those ears get flopping, you can see a little wiggle in that saddle, and that's when he's going more towards that trotty side. But there, your hands are good. You got his head up, and you're keeping him more in his gait, and there you can see you're not bouncing at all, so he's not going towards that foxtrot. But watching your video is very nice, and as he goes around, he's pretty much smooth the whole time, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to be jealous about. Here, when you go to do his turn on the haunches, I would break it down into a couple more steps and just try to stop, get his head down, and make it into like 3 steps as you're turning him, just so you can start the turn, get his head down, then push him over again, get his head down, and then finish pushing him over, and then get his head down at the end. And then that way he'll start associating that he's supposed to keep his head down as you're doing the turn. And the only thing I'd be careful with is just not to brace your hand. You can block, but you just don't want to brace your hand too much that he starts getting heavy and pulling against you. So there you're getting just that little more jiggle in the saddle because he was going more towards a foxtrot there. Now again, he kind of stays in between the two. So as long as that's smooth and comfortable for you, I think it is fine. I think you've done a very good job with this gait. So just watching him move, it looks like you'll be able to get a saddle gait out of him, but we'll have to change a couple of things just to help you get it. But your slower gaits, your flat walk and your running walk, and again, sometimes he's going a little bit more towards that foxtrot, all those are good. So to get the saddle gait, because he can get a little bit trotty, we do have to keep his head up. So when you're trying for the saddle gait, what I would do is I would raise his head up about here or a little bit higher and raise your hands up to follow. As you go to ask him to do the saddle gait, tilt his head just slightly either to the left or right. Sometimes going to the outside or to the left will help you get those horses lateral. So I would try it to the left first. I would bring your upper body back more about here and tuck your pelvis underneath you, like in that video I just posted. You might need to use your saddle just so you can push against your stirrups to push you back a little bit more. And then what I would do is kind of nudge him with your inside leg, like twice, like boom, boom. Raise his head up, tilt it a little bit to the left, and see if that'll pop him into it. A lot of times when you nudge them a couple of times with one of your legs, they will pop up into that saddle gait. You're trying to get him to kind of scoot forward and swing those legs, and then he should get it. You don't want to use poles or anything like that because that's going to make him go more towards a foxtrot. If there's anywhere that he's a little spooky in the arena, that's where I would try the saddle gaits, because a lot of times if they get just a little bit spooky, they'll kind of scoot that hind quarter underneath them. They'll bring their head up and invert their back some, and a lot of horses that'll put into a saddle gait or a rack when they kind of scoot forward. So if there's anywhere spooky, that's where I would try to start the saddle gait. And then it makes them not spook at all, because then you start having fun with the spooking and going faster, and then they're like, I don't want to do this anymore because it's work. So that's what I would try doing, is having those hands higher, your upper body back more, tilting your pelvis underneath you, a little bit more of a chair seat, having his head go off to the left, just slightly like a left bend, and then nudging him with your inside leg. If that doesn't work, bend him again to the left, nudge him with your left leg. In the beginning, you're just looking for a couple of steps where it feels completely smooth, because I'm sure he's going to be very smooth, and he's slightly inverted. And then you can scratch him, or you could give him a little treat, and then you're going to keep practicing it over time. But do try for the saddle gait last when he's completely warmed up. But the stride compared to what he's doing here is going to be a shorter stride, so he won't be swinging up underneath himself as much. There will be less reach with the hind legs and more up and down. And it sometimes feels like you're wiggling around in the saddle, but instead of it being an up and down, it's going to be more side to side. I always tell people it's kind of like twerking, or what it feels like when you're sitting on a washing machine and the clothes are moving around in there. You get that little jiggle, but it's a sideways jiggle. Okay, so you're just trying to get 1 or 2 steps, stop, reward him, and then over time keep asking for more. But for him, from what I'm seeing, I believe you're going to have to get that head higher to start, and a little bit more inversion in his back, and then sitting back. When you're on trail, you can try to get it. A lot of times with the trotty horses, if you go down a hill like this, if it's the hill's kind of slanted and it not steep, just a slow decline, a lot of times that will make them more lateral. And if you have a slight decline and then it flattens out, that can help you to get the gait, and then you can keep gaiting because it's going flat. A lot of times when it goes uphill like this, that will make the horses more on the trotty side, and then when you do it, a lot of times they'll go into that foxtrot instead. So again, raising his head up, turning it a little sideways, nudging him with your leg a couple of times. You might have to carry a stick to create more energy, and then leaning back a little higher hand to accommodate his higher head position should help you to get it. So I'll try and find a video with me doing it and attach it so you can see what I did with the horses, and then you let me know if you have any questions.